Hi, this is Mark from Wiki Design. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you two different ways that you can disable links when using the listing grid. So in the first example, I'm going to be showing you how you can remove something like the button right here just using dynamic conditions. And then the second part of the video, I'm going to be showing you how you can remove the clickable link on the whole entire listing item itself. The second one is going to require a little bit of JavaScript and is a little more advanced than just being able to show and hide different buttons and stuff like that. But let's go ahead and start with the simple one first, and then we'll go to the more complicated one next. So now I'm going to jump over into the back end and show you how I have all of these pages set up. So as you can see right here, I have a custom post type called beers. And then inside of here, I just have like a handful of different beers. Now, if I click on each one of these, I have, some general information. I'm just using like custom post types and meta fields. And what we're going to be mainly focusing on this tutorial is this right here. I have a switcher called disable link. So when someone has that on, it's going to automatically remove that clickable link right here. And so the user's not going to be able to click to this page. And now if I jump over into the custom post type, I'm going to show you how I have that set up. So underneath beers, that's where I have all of those different meta fields. Like I said, we're going to focus on this one right here. So you just give it a label right here called disable link. And this is going to be really important. You may want to copy this to your clipboard because in the second part of the tutorial, if you're using the JavaScript version, you're going to need this right here. And I'm just going to call it disable_link. And then right down here, the field type is called switcher. So this is all built into JetEngine and it's kind of like a toggle. It's just on and off. But in this case, it's considered true or false. And the next thing is you're going to want to make sure that you have this setting on right here. So if you go underneath your JetEngine, and right here where it says dynamic visibility, you're going to want to make sure you have that enabled, and then you can go ahead and hit save. So this is how we're going to be able to show and hide this button right here if that switcher is either enabled or disabled. So now you should have everything set up on the back end. Now what we can do is jump over into this listing right here. So this is just using the listing grid on this page, and you can see I have this listing item called beer listing. So let me go ahead and just open that, and really simple stuff. Let me just expand this container. I have just two containers. The first one is the dynamic image called beer photo. This is just like the title, the description, and then this right here is just a button. And as you can see, when I open up the structure right here, this red icon means that dynamic visibility is already enabled on this button. So if I click on this button right here, you can see just a simple post URL. So I just went here, dynamic tags, and it's just considered the post URL. I just typed in like learn more. Now that option I just told you to enable called dynamic visibility, this is where you're going to want to go ahead and make sure you have this on. So just click enable. And then what I have in this case is show element if condition is met. And then as you can see right down here, it needs to say switcher disable. So let me go ahead and clear this out and show you how you get to that. So if you click on condition, underneath right here where it says JetEngine specific, you're going to want to make sure that you choose switcher disabled. And then what you do is you just go into the dynamic fields right here, scroll down until you get to the JetEngine section. And this was just considered a custom field. And I have a whole bunch on this website, but if you can see right here underneath beers, that one I called disabled link. That's all you need to do right there. So now when you do that, that little red icon should show up where the button is. And go ahead and hit publish, and then let's view this on the front end, make sure you got this correct. So this button's showing because it is not clicked on the Smithix one right here. So I can actually go into there and click it, but the one from Stella is not. So let's just make sure that that condition is set up correctly. So if we go into Stella, and right here where it says disable link, that is on. And like I said, if you go back into the first one, Smithix, so that one is not clicked. So depending on how you have this set up, it might be the inverse. So if you can hide the element if it's showing. So that's why I always go ahead and just test it, because sometimes the logic can get a little confusing because you're like clicking a button that says disable. So just do a few tests and make sure that this is actually working the way it should, and then you should be good to go. So now I'm going to show you an example of how you can have it where it's the same thing but with a title. But in this case, we want to actually always have the title up there, whether that button is on or off, that disable link. So let's go ahead and actually just duplicate this. So the top one, you can see right here, it's going to be the same thing. It's just pulling the post title. And then this one below it, let's have this one with the link. So if we go into dynamic tags, let's go and just make it where that's post URL. So let's just go ahead, hit update, and let me show you on the front end, it's going to show both titles. So this one is not clickable. This one is clickable. So we need to use the same logic where we're going to be using the dynamic visibility and just kind of show and hide these depending if that button is on or off. So now we can go ahead and just follow the same logic as this button right here. So we're going to say show element if condition is met, and then if switcher is disabled. So let's go ahead and just do the same thing right here on the clickable one. So advanced, enable, show element if, go down into JetEngine if the switcher is disabled. So now we're going to go ahead and just choose that meta field. So if I go down into JetEngine, custom field, select that one right here called disable link, and then that's it. So I always like to hit publish, view it on the front end. So now we're on the front end of the page, and you can see the one called Stella, the one that's not clickable. That title disappeared. So that second one with the clickable title is gone. And the user can't, I'm clicking right now, the user can't click this one, and there's no button to show. So now all we need to do is just go ahead and do the opposite on this one right here, the one that does not have the link. So we just go into here, and we could just say the same logic, show element if condition is met, and then switcher is enabled. So let's go to the very first one, advanced, dynamic visibility on, show element if condition is met. And then you can go down into the JetEngine, and then if the switcher is enabled, do the same thing. Choose the dynamic field called, right down here, disable link. So it's just going to be the opposite of what I have right here. So you can see that one that I just did is if it's enabled, and then the second one with the link is disabled. So I know it gets confusing. I get confused too when I do these type of things. So that's why I always do a lot of testing. So that's why I do what I just did. I always make sure I hit update and make sure I get the logic correctly. Okay, so you can see right here, the one that has the workable button is working correctly. So this is now clickable. So now I can click on Smithix and it goes there. The one Stella doesn't have the button down here, and the title is not clickable. And then same thing down here, I have Miller Lite is not, I have that button called disable link on, and then I can't click it. So that's a really good way to do it, where you can use dynamic visibility to turn on and off these things. But as you can see, when you do that, you're going to have to start to duplicate a lot of things. So if you have a pretty complicated listing item, it can get a little bit crazy because you're going to have multiple images, multiple titles. The next approach is using just JavaScript. But once you set it up once, you don't have to worry about going in and making sure that anything like this, where you have dynamic visibility on and off, you don't have to worry about setting that up. This next approach is a little more advanced, but it's kind of like you set it up once and it will always work. So any links inside the listing item will just not be clickable. So let's jump into that part of the tutorial and get started. Okay, well, we have the same thing open. What I did is I removed what we just created. So I'm going to kind of start from scratch. And in this example, what I'm going to do is select the whole container. So you can see right here, this is the whole entire listing item inside the listing grid. So it's each one of these. I want to have it where the whole thing is clickable. And I'm going to use JavaScript to remove that link. So what we need to do is just go ahead on the whole container. And then underneath additional options, they have underneath HTML tag, you're going to do your A link. And then right down here, it tells you, make sure you don't have any other clickable links inside of here, because the way it works with Elementor is you can't have any clickable links if the whole container is clickable. So just go ahead, make sure you don't have anything clickable first. And then we're just going to do very simple dynamic tag post URL. So that's it. And as you can see, when I go back to the page, this whole entire listing item is going to be clickable. So I can go ahead and click into that, and that's clickable. You know, each one of these is going to be clickable. So now let's go ahead and get started on what we need to do next. So now it's going to start getting a little more complicated, but once I start showing you the code, how everything works, it will all start to make some sense. So while you have that whole container selected, what we need to do is add a custom attribute that's tied to that disable link that we created inside of JetEngine. So what you need to do is that same container that's clickable, the one that we just created, go underneath advanced and underneath attributes. You're going to see this button right here, dynamic tags. So go ahead and choose the dynamic tags. So underneath JetEngine, custom field, we're going to choose this attribute that we created called disable link. And then what we need to do is, I wanted to show you this right here. You need to separate each of these attributes key with this pipe right here, this little symbol. But let me go ahead and show you. I'm going to paste in exactly what you need to do. So you just paste this in right here underneath advanced. In the before, it needs to say data dash disable dash link and then space in that pipe symbol. So that's not going to mean anything until you see the next step. So what I'm going to do is hit publish, and then I'm going to go to the front end of that page, hit refresh. So now I'm going to open up the code for this page and show you exactly what we just created. Okay, so here we are in the back end of the code, and as you can see, I'm doing a search for the one we just created called the data disable link. And when you go through, you should start to see that this is going to display just like this on some of your listings. So in this one, it's considered true. The next one is false, true. So as you can see, you want to make sure that this is going to start rendering out correctly. And if this doesn't say true or false, you might want to go back and just make sure that everything is synced up correctly. Okay, and the last step we need to do is actually go to the page with the listing grid. So as you can see right here, I have this page, and I just have the listing grid, which is pulling in, my beer listings. And below it, what we need to do is just add one little line of JavaScript right here. As you can see, when I expand this, is really lightweight JavaScript. There's not much going on. So all we need to do is you just paste that in if you kept everything the way that I have everything set up. So that attribute we created right here is called data-disable-link equals true. And then what it's going to do is if that is enabled and is true, this JavaScript is going to remove that clickable link on that listing item. So now if we go ahead and hit publish, and you view this on the front end, hit refresh, the very first one is clickable. Stella is not clickable. Harp is, Yuengling is, Miller isn't, Bud Light is. So what I like to do is always test these things to make sure this thing works. So let's go into Bud Light and make it where it's not going to be clickable. So I'll just jump over into my beers, Bud Light, and let's go ahead and hit disable link, hit update. So now when I go to the front end, hit refresh, Bud Light is not clickable. As you can see, the mouse isn't changing. And let's see, Miller Lite is not clickable. Let's make it where, usually what I like to do is do the opposite. So let's go to Stella, and let's make sure that that is going to be clickable. So if I go back into Stella, and I'm going to remove that button to disable link. So now if I hit update, hit refresh, Stella is now clickable. So now I can click into Stella, Smithix. Anytime you make a change, you just want to make sure that everything is sticking. So let's just go back into Bud Light and just enable that back on. It's always good to go do every scenario. So turn on, off. That's how you do good testing. So now you hit refresh. So now Bud Light is clickable and everything seems to be working correctly. Stella is now clickable. So yeah, everything seems to be working correctly. So here's one thing that you may need to note when you're using JavaScript like this is, let me go ahead and give you an example. So you see right here, I'm doing a search for that attribute that we created, data display. So you can see right here where I have my mouse up here, this one is called harp and it has that attribute on it. Now, if I look right down here in this section, this is the Yuengling one. So if I go back to my list right here, it's clickable, everything is good, but it doesn't have that attribute on it. So if you're in this situation and you added that attribute after you already have some items in here, it's not going to have that on by default. So let me give you the example. So if I go into Yuengling now, and if I go ahead and click that on, hit update, on the front end of the website, that link is no longer going to be working. And if I refresh right here, right now it says there's 7 items being displayed. So if I go ahead and hit refresh, that should now say 8. So you can see right here, now I have 8 of them. So if I go down into the Yuengling one right here, it's enabled. So you just keep that in mind when you add an attribute to something on the back end. It's not going to add it automatically to existing items. Now, if I go ahead and click a whole new beer inside of here, so if I go inside of here, and let me just do a test and let's make sure everything's working. So let's say we just do Bud Light 2, just so we know. I need to choose, Bud Light. This is all just an example. I'll do test, the rating, on tap, and let me just go ahead and hit publish. I'm going to not click that button where it says disabled. So now if I go into my tap list right here, I should see Bud Light 2 is at the very top. And let's go back into the code, hit refresh. Let me copy this. That should now say 9. You see it says 4 of 8. So now when I hit refresh, it now says 9. So the very first one is, let's go up to the top, is this one right here, and that is for the Bud Light 2. So yeah, just keep that in mind that, yeah, anytime you add attributes to already existing items, it's not going to get added. Hopefully that's not too complicated, but I just wanted to add that to the end of this tutorial because when I was doing some research and looking at the code, I was like, why is that not showing up in there? So now I understand that it's because the JavaScript that we added isn't going to do anything unless it has that attribute on there already. And that's it for this tutorial on how you can disable links when you're using your listing grid. Again, this is Mark from Wiki Design.